as a Boise State grad, I've been a Broncos fan my entire life. And yes, I'm an Ohio State fan representing the shirt today, but I'm a huge Boise State fan too. Go Broncos. Today's a really special interview, a really special opportunity to learn from one of the leaders on the current football team. His name's Maddux Madsen. He's the starting quarterback for Boise State. His story is super unique because I think what you'll learn from this is how he's persevered through adversity and how he's taken advantage of opportunities when they've presented themselves to him. We'll learn about the recruiting process and how he ended up at Boise in the first place. We'll talk about the transition to collegiate football as compared to that of high school football. We'll talk about, we both agree that Utah colleges suck at recruiting. I'm not a Utah college fan at all, but it's funny. We kind of share a little bit of a common thought there. But anyway, we talk a lot about his career at Boise State, including his knee injury and how he was able to overcome that. But what people don't fully understand is the process to getting back to playing that happened in the offseason. And so he'll talk about that, some of the ups and downs of the rehab process to get himself ready to play football again. So we'll talk about that, some of his favorite games, what he's learned from Ashton Jeanty, what he's learned from Coach Danielson. We'll talk about the Fiesta Bowl and the nerves that come along with that, and some of his favorite memories there, as well as his favorite life lesson that he's taken away from football. There's a lot coming, and I hope you guys enjoy this one. We get to sit back and chill and talk and just get to learn from QB1 at Boise State University. Hope you guys enjoy this episode of the Gametime Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time!
This is the Gametime Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's going on, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Gametime Guru podcast. Shane Larson here, host of the show. Excited to be here with you guys. Listen, it's 2025. I've been doing the show for 8 years now. It's been downloaded in 182 countries, all 50 states. Thanks in large part to all of you guys. I always tell you guys thank you for joining. But if this is your first time ever listening to the podcast, welcome aboard. I just encourage you guys to hit that follow button, whichever podcast platform you're listening on. If you're on YouTube, please follow me. I'm trying to build out the YouTube platform. Never really did that. But if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, hit the subscribe button. It's free, but we'll be coming to you every week with new interviews from sports figures from all around the globe. So cool opportunity for me today to chat with this athlete that we have here. He is the quarterback at Boise State University. His name is Maddux Madsen. Maddux, thanks for joining the show, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you for having me on.
Heck yeah, brother. Man, you're a big name around here in the Treasure Valley, but I want to kind of get into just getting to know you a little bit. A lot of us have watched you. I'm a Boise State alum, graduated in 2017. I'm 36, but I've been around Boise State football my entire life. Been going to them since I was 6 years old. I've kind of seen the entire evolution of Boise State football. So obviously, big fan of yours. It's been kind of cool to watch it, but I want to get to know Maddux prior to Boise State a little bit, kind of getting to know you a little bit more. Obviously, know you're coming from Utah, playing ball down there. But before that even, let's talk about your athletic career when you were younger. Were you around football from a really young age, man?
Yeah, I started playing football when I was in fourth grade. Obviously, I played flag, but fourth grade was the first time that I played tackle. And I had to beg my mom. My dad's obviously a baseball coach, but he didn't want me to play football until I was older. And so I was able to beg my mom one time when my dad was on a road trip. And then we got signed up and everything kind of worked out from there.
No, that's dope, man. Okay, so had to get the approval from the parents to be able to play at a young age. That's actually the first year I played tackle football was fourth grade. I played flag and then I played tackle going in fourth and fifth grade. But so did you play multiple sports growing up? I know obviously we've heard the stories from all the media, like the names, we got Maddux, you got the baseball family and so forth. But did you play multiple sports growing up as you're coming through the ranks?
Yes, sir. I played football, baseball, and basketball, all of them. And then I stopped playing basketball after my freshman year. And then I played baseball up until I graduated.
So I want to ask you this, man, as far as the strengths in between each sport that you're playing, what I notice a lot now, Maddux, is like a lot of kids, they specialize in a sport pretty early now, it's just with the club sports world and so forth. Did you notice any benefits from playing multiple sports? Like, did one benefit the other, so to speak?
Yeah, 100%. I always tell people that you're hurting yourself more than helping yourself if you don't play multiple sports. And I get it. A lot of people enjoy the fact of like chasing your dreams of one sport. But I also think that you give up too early on something else if you don't continue to try and like try all three sports until you literally like are out of it. I mean, to this day, I wish that Boise State had a baseball team because I would want to be playing baseball. Like there's an advantage to playing multiple sports, and some people don't get that. But seriously, like multiple sports helps more than it hurts.
Now, I appreciate the insight on that. I think a lot of athletes need to hear that and just understand that there is some benefit to it. I've heard other guys like Jake Plummer was an NFL quarterback. I had him on the show, and I remember him talking about it once, that it helped him avoid burnout for one, but he was able to stay competitive and just like learn different skill sets and so forth as well. But like, it just helps you kind of like reset mentally to play a different sport. And yeah, of course it teaches you the skills and just different things there, you know, from a baseball perspective. Was there anything specifically that, you know, playing baseball has helped you that you might take even today as a quarterback at the collegiate level, that you can, like, maybe some of the intangibles from baseball that you still trickle into your football career today? Anything that you would notice off the top of your head?
I mean, not really. Obviously know, like, there's, especially at the quarterback position, like mechanically, a lot of people relate stuff from baseball to football. But when it comes to like the understanding of a game, it's obviously a completely different game. So that's hard to apply. But I also think like baseball is extremely competitive, and a lot of people don't really get this, but you do have to be tough to play baseball. And I think like, obviously I was a catcher and pitcher. So like in ways I built toughness catching, which I feel like translates a little bit over to football, but there's not much between the two of them when you're talking like mindset and stuff. But obviously mechanically, in my position especially, you'll see a little bit of translation.
For sure, man. Man, yeah. So here's something that I've noticed. Well, actually, before I get into that, I had a question that I wrote down. As far as your recruiting process, Maddux, when you were looking for schools, you know, I coach athletes in the high school level for basketball. I coach at the club level, and usually I'm coaching the 17U or the unsigned seniors team. So they're looking for offers. They're trying to get the recruiting process, you know, flowing. And so we're trying to help them out with that. And I see the pressures that athletes have, man, like when they're trying to get recruited and when they're not getting the offers and they're not seeing the success, and they're seeing their friends or somebody else that they think are less talented than them that are getting offers, and they're like, what is going on? So the recruiting process is kind of, it's kind of hard these days. It depends if you don't know what you're doing. And I'm just curious if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing some experiences during your recruiting process, and maybe, you know, how you were able to, you know, be seen outside of just competing at a very high level in high school. But like, were there other things that you did, reaching out to coaches, going to camps, or anything of that nature that might have helped you out?
Yeah, I mean, I always say being recruited was probably the funnest times of my life, yet the worst, because like you feel like the achievement of a coach wanting you, and like that's awesome, but it's also the worst because the same coach that's hitting you up and he wants you is also the same coach that's not offering you a scholarship or like saying come to us. Like there's a difference between interest and scholarship, and so that's where I find it tough. But on my side of it, obviously I wasn't a highly recruited athlete. I had 2 offers, New Mexico and Boise, and I'm glad it worked out between Boise and I, because else I would have been playing Division II ball somewhere else, because I know I wouldn't have lasted in New Mexico. But I also think like a lot of kids kind of lose the fact and idea of it is okay to go like lower level, FCS, and like that's totally okay. And nowadays with the way the portal and stuff is going, like I always say, if you're good enough, you will be found. Like you will be, whether you're playing Division III football, you will be found. Like there's coaches that look at those levels that are looking in the portal. Like those are guys that coaches honestly take chances on compared to Division I fallbacks, because obviously it didn't work out at one Division I school. Like, why would it work out at another, compared to, oh, this guy's a better D2 JUCO kid. Like obviously he has a chance to be better. But to me, it's hard because I never really was this guy that was sending my email to coaches. Like, I didn't play 7-on-7 until going into my senior year. I played 2 months of it. And obviously I had a good group of circle that helped me recruiting, but it's tough. That's the hardest part of the game is you don't really know exactly how you're going to get found or where it's going to be spark at one moment. But I mean, like Boise State, for instance, Coach Plow just hits me up on Twitter. And it was just, I mean, that started in February when he hit me up, and I committed July 6th. So it was this whole long thing. And that's what people don't realize. Like, I was out at Boise probably 3 times before I even committed. And that was at a camp. Like, I did go to their camp. And like, I just went on a couple trips in the summer, like spring game. Like, there was things I did to Boise. And I was obviously like, I really didn't want to go to New Mexico, but I was also waiting for Boise to offer me. Like, the same day I committed is the same day I got offered. So I committed on the spot because that's somewhere I knew where I wanted to go. But like I said, it's a lot of people just expect, hey, my first phone call. Like, for instance, myself, I get a call from Iowa State in January. And I was like, oh my goodness, Iowa State, Ames, Iowa, that place is sick, Big 12. I heard from them. They're like, hey, let's get you out on campus for sometime in the spring. And then I don't hear from them again. And nowadays it's even harder because like the guy I was talking to also lost his job that like same time. So I didn't have any contact with them anymore. And I was like, great, there goes all my high hopes of Iowa State. But I mean, recruiting is tough. Recruiting is very, very difficult.
Man, and from your story, I don't think the general population knows that. Like, they don't understand how you got to Boise State. And I don't think they understand how any player gets to the school that they get to. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and yours was a long journey from, like you said, it was like February, Plow gets a hold of you. It was like months later that the thing even worked itself out, and you got to be patient. You got to understand that. That's one of the things I've always told the kids that I coach is just I preach patience with them. Like, I know it doesn't seem like it's going to happen, but if you continue to like get your name out there, and if you're just patient, eventually the right thing will come around, but you just got to be ready for it. You got to take advantage of it when it comes. I want to know from your perspective, coming from Utah, did you follow a lot of Boise State football at all? Coming from Utah, it's not too far away, or were you more of a BYU, Utah type of guy, Utah State type of guy?
Yeah, it was BYU and Utah. I was more of a Utah fan, but then when I got into high school, I'm obviously LDS, and so BYU was a place I wanted to go play. But I always say even Utah State, those Utah schools suck at recruiting.
Dude, that's awesome. I too am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. So I hate BYU, to be honest. So like, I despise all of them. But I'm a Boise
I was gonna
State
say, if
guy.
you're a BSU alum, most people do.
Yeah, I'm a Boise State guy. So I'm with you on that, dude. Those Utah schools suck at recruiting. But hey, all respect. So. Yeah. Maddux, when you got to Boise, I am curious, man, like, what was your first, like, when you've committed, now you're on campus, now you're getting ready. At the time, like, you're there, you've got a quarterback room with some talented guys there. How did it go your first camp with, I mean, not your first camp, but like your first, I guess, like spring or summer ball with Boise State, when you're now officially a college football player, you're ready to roll? How were the sessions? I've talked to other former players who've talked about running decks, stadium decks. They've talked about the intensity. Did you notice a difference in intensity compared to that of the high school level? What was the transition like, so to speak?
Yeah, 100%. And people always just like, for instance, I got sent a workout plan because everyone begs like, hey coach, can I get the playbook? Can I get the workout plan once you sign? And they're like, yeah. And I didn't do anything. Like, I enjoyed my high school career, enjoyed my summer until I got up there. And it's a humbling moment, and it's obviously tough, but that's where you grow the most. You grow the most from when you get there to, you could be 4 or 5 months into season, or I guess 4 or 5 months into being there. And then that's when you're like, oh shoot, I just got humbled so fast. Like, the hardest part about the whole thing is not even the workouts. Like, you get there and then you realize like you were once the best player on your team, or at least one of the best. And then you get into this culture shocking moment where it's like, great, now I'm at the very bottom of what I want to be at. And for me, it's like, I thought I had an awesome camp. Shoot.
Man,
Oh, sorry. My
are
thing
you
just
there?
went completely out. But
You're there. So you said you had an awesome camp.
yeah, you got me?
You thought you had an awesome camp. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I feel like I had an awesome camp. And then I go like we have our post camp meetings and I get told like I'm the fifth guy or fourth guy. Yeah, I was the fourth guy and I was just like, are we like kind of serious? And I thought I was going to travel. I didn't travel. And obviously my since I've been here, the way it's worked out is crazy. The opportunities that I've gotten to play is crazy. That's a whole nother story, but it's a culture shock. Like you get there and you were once the best and now you're just some mediocre middle average athlete.
So to that point, though, I mean, that could be said for pretty much every athlete too. Though you're coming out of high school, you're good and you're solid. And I honestly, Maddux, that happens at the junior college level. Even like you got these days, there's a lot of the talent at the junior college level, and a lot of these kids around the high schools go there and they get shell shocked. You know what I mean? It's even at that point at some point. But my question for you is then, if you could give advice to these players, they're going to experience the culture shock, like you're saying. It's going to be a complete different atmosphere. I mean, that's just what it is. So what advice would you give them, fourth on the depth chart, not traveling? It's like your expectations are like, whoa, like what's going on here? What advice would you give them to continuously like buy in and continue to work hard, even though at this point now you're like, oh, is there any light at the end of the tunnel here that is this truly what I want to be doing? How do you buy into that?
Yeah. I mean, I think we just talked about it in the whole recruiting thing. It's a patience characteristic. I mean, guys, Rome wasn't built in days. Like that, it's one of those things that in ways it's not obviously similar, but if you're like, don't be discouraged by the fact that you're going to walk in there and not be this guy that you once were in high school. Like you can't get discouraged, because if that happens, you're the one of those guys that never grows, and instead you fall back. And then you're in the position where you're like, why am I not playing? Like all this stuff. If you're constantly doing the right thing, coaches love to see guys doing the right thing, be on time, humble. I mean, it's one of my hardest things is nowadays. Like I see guys come into Boise State and it's their second day on campus, and all of a sudden these guys are yapping to other people. And I'm like, hey, there's something called respect, and that's more than earned. And quite honestly, you guys don't got that yet. So no one's going to listen to you. And instead, you're going to look like a complete idiot. So my advice for those guys is go in with this quiet understanding. Obviously, reach out to people, talk to people, but you're not going to be the guy that's being vocal in workouts. I'll tell you that, or else you're going to make some guys frustrated. But I mean, it's like you just said, it's patience, and you can't get discouraged by the fact that you're not once the best player like you was.
No, that's actually really good advice. And it's just like the reality of collegiate athletics too. Like guys coming in, I think they have to have a reality check at some point. I think that's important to know 100%. It before you get there.
Yeah, 100%. And you're in for a rude one too. Like it's not going to be a nice conversation. We're like, hey man, like it's going to be like, this is where you are and this is why. And some guys might get their feelings hurt by it, but others that take it with the right mindset are obviously going to set themselves up for further success.
I love that, man. So I guess to that point, how do you be a leader without being annoying? How do you come in and is it just like earning that respect? Like you said, like if you want to come in and still show leadership characteristics, especially the quarterback position, you still want to have some sort of influence on the team, confidence without being arrogant, so to speak. How would you do that? Just is that exactly what it is? Just coming in there and like learning but still being confident?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because there's so many, like obviously with the transfer portal and like some guys are early enrolled, but the first thing I could give advice for is like leading your class. Be the guy that texts your class. Like you obviously have your class group chat and it's like, hey, make sure everyone's awake, make sure everyone's on time. And then when ball comes around, perform. Like the aspect that leadership has when it comes to talent is huge. I think people lack that or don't understand that as much. Like if you're a good football player, it's going to help you a lot more becoming a great leader in the game, especially. Obviously leadership qualities are built, but more respect is earned when you're competing, making plays. Like guys are going to listen to you in that case. Guys aren't going to listen to you if you're going in there and you're not doing the right thing. You don't know the play call. You don't know where you're going with the ball. Like those guys aren't going to listen to you, but you're still going to be the one to yap. And then it's just turns into this. Everyone has a hard time with this guy and there's no confidence in him.
Sure. Maddux, I got a question for you on like being at Boise State. I mean, just kind of seeing, your opportunities. I always talk to kids about this too. And I think you're a great example of that. Like when the opportunity comes about, you got to take advantage of it sometimes. Sometimes you only get one shot, one chance of that, so to speak. Quote Eminem if you want to on that. But like you get one opportunity. Sometimes it's just one. Some people get many opportunities, and sometimes people only get one. They got to take advantage of it and make the most of it. And I feel like you were given opportunities that came about that were, just things happened, and it kind of gave you an opportunity to be in the spotlight. And I felt like you did an amazing job at taking advantage of that. So I guess maybe you think differently, but I felt like it was like you've always, every time that you've had an opportunity to shine, you've shown, like you've been able to shine and you've shown your skill set. So talk to us about that. When you finally got the opportunity to go out on the field in front of the crowd and actually showcase your skill set, how did you do that at a high level without, like letting the spotlight shrink you, so to speak?
Yeah, I'll start with like my freshman year. My freshman year, just how the whole thing worked out. Like Hank leaves, Talon plays, Sam plays. Like they were kind of, who knows what they were doing. And then as the season went on, I actually got put in the backup position, and I was able to go play like against Nevada, and we moved the ball. Like I love that because I got to play like a lot of the third and most of the fourth, and like I was able to move the ball, and that's what I'm talking about. Like understanding the position you're in, like leading the offense and stuff like that. And then come around like the next year when it was just Talon and I was competing for the backup spot. I love CJ. I was competing for the backup spot with CJ. And then my spring game, like that year, like it was awesome. I loved it. I mean, Bush kind of sat and talked to me in high praises, and I was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just one of those things that why would I make some moment bigger than it actually is? I mean, for instance, the spring game, it's a spring game. Why am I going to try and get geeked out for some spring game and be some superhero? Instead, let's let ourselves make plays and trust in what we're doing. And then we go into the season. I wasn't bummed but I didn't feel like I actually had a shot in camp to be like a starting quarterback. Like it was more, once again, kind of competing for the backup. And I was kind of upset. I was like, really? Like I just did all this in the spring. I outplayed people in the spring, and now I'm going to come back into the summer and there's not going to be any change, like all this stuff. And so I was kind of upset, but then obviously 2 games in that next year, Talon gets hurt. We couldn't really do much. And then obviously I had the chance to play. And like I just said, like that was a big game. We're playing UCF. That was a huge game. But like I just said, why would I make any moment bigger than it actually is? And I think I got a good understanding of that my freshman year. Like I'm not going to be some superhero guy where I need to go run for 50 yards or throw some 60-yard bomb. Like the simplicity of the game of football, people lack. And that's where I feel like I understand, like this game is simple if you make it that way and trust in people. And so like you mentioned, the opportunity stuff, like being prepared mentally is the biggest part. Like if you get into a game and you're pooping down both legs, like everyone's like, you're going to blow it. Quite honestly, it's not going to be something that you enjoy. And so to me, it's like having confidence in the preparation that you did mentally to go in, and obviously you're talented enough to be in the situation you're in. And it purely comes down to confidence when it comes to those opportunities.
Dude, no, I love that, man. I love it. And you mentioned preparation. That's a big thing. But if I could just have everybody who listened to that rewind that and just take note of what you just said, like don't make the moment bigger than it really is. I mean, just simplicity, man. I think that's awesome. And it makes sense just kind of watching the way in which you conduct yourself on the field. One thing I wanted to ask is, like, obviously you mentioned names like Hank, you got Talon, there's other guys, right? But like, you've got these guys, you've been in the room, and then there's coaching changes. There's all these shifts, there's adjustments. The culture in the locker room, what was it like? How did you guys stay together? And like, did you notice friction when everything was like, there was a lot of outside noise with so much going on. And so from the outside, it looked like there was a ton of noise. Were you guys able to keep most of that under control with all the shifts and changes, or did it get kind of heated sometimes?
Obviously, like my freshman year, I was devastated. Coach Plow was the guy that recruited me, and I lose him. Obviously, Coach Cutter's amazing. And then we kind of go get to the Mountain West Championship, like. And then the year after, obviously, the year was long, but I got to the point where, like, I obviously got hurt the same game that Avalos got fired. And so for me, it was kind of different. I got to just observe a lot because I wasn't really preparing for football, all geeked out. Like, I was just kind of got to observe. I was injured, got surgery, like all that stuff. And so to me, I don't think guys really lost their focus. If anything else, it brought more. The ability that those guys had to just flip a switch and then almost be an exciting change is good. I mean, change is good. And obviously the way that the season was going was unfortunate, but we were able to turn it around so quickly. And I think that's a big proof of, like the whole patience thing when you're trying to play, like patience in the fact that like not everything's going to be given to you instantly. In fact, earning it in some ways is obviously going to be harder than others. And I think in the locker room, especially, like everyone rallied together, and that was the coolest part about I guess 2 seasons ago, was just like the rallying together and kind of playing for something bigger than each other.
Absolutely, man. It was cool to watch from the outside, just kind of seeing how things came about. As I've gotten older, it's funny, Maddux, as a coach, as a dad, former athlete myself, like I've gotten away from thinking that everyone has to be undefeated like all the time. Like I'm not that guy. Like they don't have to go undefeated. So I actually enjoy watching a little adversity, kind of seeing how people, and I thought that season was incredible. I thought that was a really fun season. I found a lot of joy watching that and kind of seeing how the team as a whole kind of pulled together, coaching shifts and everything. And like, that's what I felt like dominoed into this year. You mentioned something that I also wanted to bring up is your injury. I don't know how many people, because no one talks about it, but I've always kind of thought about it. Now that I have you on the show, I kind of want to ask you, because like you hurt your knee, dude. Like there's a serious injury there, and no one really talks about it. I think people just think, hey, he had his injury, rehab, he's back on the field, he's a starter. They don't know what goes on when an injury happens. The fact that you had to go through surgery and rehab, I want to talk about that component, because as someone who's had an injury, I ripped my shoulder out, surgery, 6 months of like not being able to move. There's a lot of mental like adjustments that have to be made there because you go through a spiral. What was your rehab like for the injury to get yourself back in shape so that you could compete this year? You know what I mean? I've always been, I just felt like, man, he's actually back to full strength. And they usually say with an ACL or any knee injury, it's like usually the second year, especially in basketball, but like football too. Second year is when you feel like 100% because you're used to moving on and all this stuff. But like you were back and like kind of firing. So I don't know, maybe it was just outside perspective. I'd just love to hear how it went on behind the scenes.
Yeah. I mean, so I tore I don't think it's actually ever came out yet, but I tore my MCL and PCL.
Okay.
And when I first got my MRI, it was just my MCL. And then when they did surgery, they did a scope and they noticed that my PCL was blown up. And that's probably why it wasn't feeling like my knee was, I could barely walk when I got. And so it was tough. Like a lot of people MCL, like you're obviously on crutches, but you can walk a little bit. But I was screwed up. And then obviously I get surgery, and I was bummed more than anything. That was the first time I had missed football games when I'd been like, just due to injury, I guess. Like I didn't know how to react, and I just got named the starter. And so it was just a bummer. Like it was a complete bummer. There's not a better way to put it. But then obviously I kind of just gave myself the right mindset of like, hey, I know what I'm going to do. I've got to get back to where I once was, and that's not just going to come by me sitting on my tail. It was a very intentional rehab every day. Like I think it was 2-3 days after I got surgery, I was back in the training room, just starting on the simplest things. And it was rough. Like quite honestly, nobody knows this, but I actually got a second surgery.
I don't think I did.
Yeah, it's kind of coming out. I got a second surgery in May. And it was just to kind of clean stuff up, but that was like one of the harder ones because it wasn't like anything really like fixing ligaments or anything. It was more just like cleaning everything up. So it was like weird because I felt like I can do a lot, but they were telling me on this timeline. And so like when I first got back, I mean, for instance, we get back in the summer and like I was not planning on running decks because of this surgery. And then all of a sudden I'm running decks. And I think quite honestly, the fact in my mindset, like I was being super aggressive. I just felt like I had to, like obviously competing for a spot, like the last thing I wanted to do was just give that up. And so like Coach Cutter always said, like, I got to do some stuff in the spring, whether it's 7-on-7, which I did 7-on-7 and routes on air every day. I never did any of the team periods, but that is like what I had to do to kind of like stay, like show everyone else, like I'm still in the mix, and, but I was super aggressive. And that was kind of my mindset towards the whole thing is like, I'm not going to let this knee thing control my whole career. Obviously injuries happen, But like you mentioned, I mean, the whole side of the biggest problem throughout the whole thing was just like my mindset, like my mentality. Not my mindset, but like my whole mental health in general. Like I was so sad just all the time. I tried to be in good spirits, but it was just frustrating. Like I was once, the named starting quarterback, and then a half later of my first game, I'm getting taken off, realizing I have to get surgery, and then it never really felt good throughout the whole spring. Like I was fighting just constant discomfort, pain. I had to get another surgery. I was like, great, like this sucks.
Yeah.
And so I get the other surgery. And then obviously we come back in the summer, and like the whole mindset thing that's a tricky part. Like we go out to fall camp, and I had practice all summer, like PRPs, everything without my knee brace. And then we go out to fall camp, and I like went to our head trainer. I was like, hey, can I wear my knee brace? Because we weren't planning on it. Like I was still to that day, like in a ways worried. He's like, no, you'll be fine. Like you have nothing to worry about. But I just remember like that was always in the back of my mind until like I actually played my first game. And I mean, I guess scrimmages is kind of where it like vanished too. But like that's the last thing I'm worrying about when I'm taking a snap was my knee. But that's the hardest part, like the whole knee thing. And even to this day, like I wouldn't say I'm 100%. I'm probably 95, 97, but my right knee still sometimes I'm like, ooh, it's cold in the morning. I'm a little grumpy. Like that happens. And so like I know, and people always say it's a long time, like it's more than a year to where your body actually accepts like the new ligaments and what they're doing. So it's tough. The injury's tough. I never wish that upon my worst enemy, because that is the worst thing, and the whole mental side of it makes it 10 times worse.
No, and I appreciate your honesty on that, man. That's why I like wanted to bring that up, because dude, I'm serious, Maddux. I feel like Boise State fans too, like they never even talk about that. And I'm like, dude, that was actually like not that long ago. It was in season last year, and then all of a sudden he's starting at the beginning of the year. I'm like, that's a relatively quick rehab. And just having been through injuries, I know what it's like. And that's why I always say, though, if someone's come back from an injury, though, you better watch out, because that takes some sort of mental toughness to get through the whole process. There is like some serious. Like there was a time when my shoulder, man, I tell people this, man, I thought I was never going to move my shoulder again, because I couldn't lift my arm for like 2 weeks after my surgery. I was like, I'll never move my shoulder again. I started bawling. I was like 28 years old, thinking I was like done with my life. And that's how crazy it was, though. That's what was going on.
It's tough. It's seriously like, I remember those days where I'd go and I'm trying to straighten my leg, and one day it was awesome, and the next day I'd go in and it was worse than the day before, and I'd be like, what is going on? Like it would piss me off so bad. And even like that's the joyous part about those athletic trainers, is they know how to put up with the whole mental side of it, which makes it easier, because they're not going to let me slack on a day just because it doesn't feel good. Like they're still going to make me get after it, knowing that it's going to help me. And it obviously has helped me so much. So I can't really thank them enough. They're the best.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I guess to that point, after knowing all of that with the injury, there are athletes that listen to this, especially here in Idaho too. I got a lot of high school athletes that are listening. What advice would you give them if they're going through an injury right now, to give them the confidence to get back? Like, what would you tell them, Maddux? Like, I haven't been through it.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Like, talk to people, rely on people. I mean, I talked to a psychologist just about it, and there were steps that we took to get me back to feeling confident. But I also think like you have this picture in your mind of what you once were, and don't forget that. There's no reason to forget who you once were just because of something that came up a little halt to your success. So don't forget that you're an awesome player. Like deep down in my head, I just constantly thought like I'm a stud. Like I've been doing this for a while. Like why would I just give up on something now?
I love that. I think it's dope. Question for you. I love your swag, by the way. I'm a big player of like look good, feel good, play good kind of thing. I've always been that way my whole life. I love that you got a visor. I love the whole thing. Do you have a player that you used to follow, like a Johnny Manziel-esque or a Baker Mayfield type of player or anything? Or is it like, have you always just been a visor type, like swagged out kind of guy? Or what do you feel on that side?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wore a visor, but I always thought it was more like the visors to look cool. People can always say it does something else. No, visors to look cool. That's strictly it. But like when it comes to like what I'm wearing, arm sleeves and stuff, I've never really like looked at people. I know in high school I was a big Justin Fields guy.
Okay.
I think the QB1 Beyond the Lights like came out, and then I just kind of started following Justin Fields, so I was a huge fan of that. But honestly, like there wasn't really someone that I'm like, oh, I want to be like that guy when it comes to what he wears. It was more just like you see a bunch of the quarterbacks wearing something similar and kind of finding my own gig.
Sure. No, that's cool, dude. Shout out. Hey, I'm repping my Buckeyes gear too. I don't know if you know that, but I'm a huge Buckeyes fan too.
Yeah, I saw some of that. I saw you posting about some of that.
Yeah, diehard Buckeyes fan, diehard Boise State fan. But yeah, Justin Fields is my guy right there. Yeah, QB1, man. Like that was where everybody found out about Tate Martell and a lot of other guys too, like Jake Fromm and all them. But Tate was, oh man, good times. So this year, obviously, Maddux was a historic year for you guys, like super awesome. A lot of expectations coming into this season. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty alongside you in the backfield doing the thing, and you got to be around what arguably should have been the Heisman Trophy winner, but Heisman Trophy finalist. What was it like going into the season, being around somebody of his magnitude? What did you learn from being around him and his work ethic? Is there anything that stood out to you about Ashton, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, just that guy is all about his business. I think in everything in life, like once you put your mind towards like what you're gonna do, the success kind of works itself out. Obviously, you go through some trials, but like once Ashton realized that he's like, hey, I'm gonna be the best player in the country, like what he did to get there, whether it was squatting 600 and they limited him, like, hey, no more, like stuff like that. Like seriously, he literally would he squatted 600 pounds and they're like, hey, like no more. And everyone's like, oh, like he just moved 600 pounds with ease. Like, let's let him do more. And no more. 600 is obviously an absurd amount, but that's like Ashton. And literally from the simplest times, like talk about banged up all year. To me, this is something where I know I can learn from, because in ways I'm a little baby when it comes to like getting hit and stuff. Not getting hit, but like the next morning I wake up, I'm like, I'm so sore. My girlfriend would always be like, you got hit like twice. Think about Ashton carrying the ball 35 times and getting tackled 35 times by multiple people. I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. But like to me, like that's where I can learn from, is because this dude would go and like put his body on the line every game for the team. And obviously, like I'm not thinking anything else. Like I'm not going to put my body on the line. But like then what he did to get himself healthy, first guy in the training room, like that guy was banged up all year. The certain things like modifications, stuff that he did to like his workout plan, like to make sure that he was healthy, is why I think I can learn from Ashton when it comes to that. And in ways like that sets the example to others of like a pure leader.
Yeah.
Like, all those guys see that and it's like, oh, this guy's the best player in the country. Well, look, he does this, he does this, he does this, he does this. Like, let's kind of mirror that. It's working for him. Hopefully it works for everyone else.
Sure thing, man. That's cool. That's awesome. I just always like to learn what somebody's, when you're around somebody of that caliber, obviously there's things to learn from them. So this year, what was your favorite game that you competed in this year? Was it the Mountain West Championship, Fiesta Bowl? If you could look back at one game that really set, and maybe it's a different game, maybe it's not either one of those, I don't know. But like, what was your favorite game and why this year?
I mean, my like childhood favorite game, obviously the Fiesta Bowl, but I can't stand losing. I hate it. So if I had to say my favorite game, one that I really enjoyed, was obviously the Mountain West Championship. Just because, I mean, I can go back and talk on the Fiesta Bowl. Like, that's just a surreal moment that I was able to be in. Just enjoy, like, every little bit of kind of the season that we had, and not taking that ever for, like, granted. That place was sweet. The whole vibe was awesome. But the Mountain West Championship, just winning another Mountain West, like just winning a championship in general, is obviously something that I've always wanted to do. And obviously the year before, I felt like I wasn't as much involved. I feel like that ring was like, here's a little, played in a couple games.
Yeah.
Now you're injured. Like, here's this ring. But this year, especially, like being able to contribute and kind of make plays in that game, that makes it all worth it.
Heck yeah, man. That was a big one for just people who've been in Boise their whole lives, like myself. It was really cool to see the Mountain West Championship on the blue, take the goalpost down, do the thing. It's showing.
The goalpost was something else.
It was cool, though. I think the state of Boise State athletics is in a really good spot, Maddux. I think it's really cool to see now. I've always kind of knocked on us as a fan base. I mean, I'm one of them, but like, I just felt like we're not there yet. Like but we're getting there. And I feel like now we're actually exponentially growing as far as like fill the stadium, actually stop complaining about the game ticket prices when in reality they're really not that expensive. I mean,
I always said I would pay $180 to go watch Ashton Jeanty play. That's called
Dude,
the Ashton Jeanty.
It's nothing, man. Like honestly, like I'm not joking you. Like I literally paid $500 a ticket to go see Ohio State Notre Dame. That was $1,000 between me and my dad. It's like those are the things, and that's normal. $190 to $200 a ticket is face value at most of the big schools, and so that's why I was always frustrated with the fan base. But to that point, I feel like Jeremiah Dickey, he's done a great job at like developing the culture there, putting the right people in place. We got Danielson here doing his thing for the football program, yourself, everyone, and I felt like this year especially they stepped over the peak there. Now we're rolling. I think it's really cool. The game day atmosphere is really, really good. I think it's awesome. So, but the Fiesta Bowl, man. So the Fiesta Bowl, yes, I know you hate losing, but it is so like I was in California, actually. I was going to try to hit that game and then go to the Rose Bowl as well, but I was down in Pasadena for the Rose Bowl. So I was watching the game from the hotel, kind of bummed about that because I wanted to be in Arizona for the game. But just like, I remember being there. I've been to the Fiesta Bowl 4 times. I freaking love it. Twice for Boise State, twice for Ohio State. I love that stadium. Love the entire atmosphere. Love the venue and the whole thing. But watching you guys run out of the tunnel, watching Penn State run out of the tunnel, it's just a historic program like Penn State, Boise State, blue collar. I love it. What was it like when it was time to play? I know you mentioned multiple times, don't make the big moment bigger than it is. Like, don't make it bigger than it is. Did you feel like that was one that was actually kind of a big moment, or were you trying to make it like simple?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always really good about like my nerves. I mean, Sarah asked me the other day, what do I do for my nerves? And I feel like I'm always really good about it. But I'll tell you what, like we walked out for warm-ups and I'm like, I got the chills. I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is insane. And then we obviously go in, we come back out in our uniforms, like for warm-ups. And it just is like, it keeps getting more and more real as it comes. And obviously, like once you complete the first pass, it's a whole like, oh, hey, this is just football again. But leading up to it, I was like, this is crazy. Like I was tripping myself out about like, do I wear like grass specific cleats? Like I was tripping myself out about that. I'm like, why am I tripping about this? Like I've never done this before, but it definitely got to me a little bit. But once I was engaged in football, I was like, yeah, this is just another football game. It's still a 100-yard field, end zones. So
that's awesome. Did you notice, and this is, I mean, it's going to be hard for you to answer this, I'm sure, but like, was there a difference in talent going up against a program like Penn State, which arguably could have easily made the championship game if they were just a play or two away from that? Was there a difference? Because I felt like you guys matched just fine with them. Some are like, oh, the score is this. Like, no, if you watch the game, which sucks going back and watching the loss, but if you watch the game, I felt like y'all, minus a couple of plays here and there that switched momentum, matched pretty well. But did you feel like did you notice a difference in athleticism or anything of that nature playing them?
Yeah, I mean, those guys are extremely talented. And I mean, I was talking about it with, I think it was Roger and Mason, 2 of the offensive linemen the other day. And it was like, there's a couple, like Roger's like, always look into some guy's eyes. And I'm like, yeah, this guy's not going to be any good. He's like, I looked into that guy. I was like, yeah, he's tired. Like, I know he's tired. But then he kind of stood me up. And I was like, that's just them. Like there is a level of talent that they play at. And obviously they had this rich tradition. But this year, especially for our team, and I know like going forward at Boise State, like it's not going to be this huge gap. Like they might have guys that are somewhat more talented, but I'm telling you, like we probably had 4 or 5 guys on the field that were just as talented, if not more.
I would agree with that. I would totally agree with that. Actually, that's a full-on truth right there. I think, and the talent gap is definitely getting smaller and smaller as far as like big time programs, so to speak. We've got a lot of like, especially when you're winning. Boise State's developed a winning culture, and people are wanting to come here. Like,
yeah,
they realize like,
people want to win. Yeah, like the transfer portal window, guys are like hitting us up to come here, and it's like that's the one thing I love about Coach D is he's not going to bring some wrong guy in here.
No, for sure.
Every guy that brings in here is going to be the correct guy.
I love it, man. I love seeing that. So I guess obviously the loss is tough, but do you have a favorite play or a moment from the Fiesta Bowl, Maddux, that you can like talk about, like something that was it a touchdown? Like what was it? Like, I mean, you were playing a hell of a game, in my opinion. I thought you were doing an incredible job. You managed the game extremely well. So, like, to me, that was probably your best game, in my opinion. I don't know. You might.
Yeah. I'm really glad you say that because, like, to me, that was one of the best games I played. And, like, I look back at the very first interception, and I was so frustrated about that because, like, I let the play with like the touchdown to the hands of the face. I let that kind of not affect it, but it just was like to me that was a stupid play by myself, like on my end. That's where I get frustrated. Like I don't throw picks, and so that was frustrating. But then I don't think people realize like when you get down in a game, you're 4th and 13 on your own 25, and you're down 3 possessions. What do you want us to do? Punt?
Yeah,
like
you got to take chances, man.
Yeah, we have an opportunity to pass the ball and plays good coverage. Pick well, that pick was 30 yards down the field. It was just as good as a punt at that point.
Yeah.
And the last one, like, you're just trying to make play. Like, I'm personally like, I watched it the other day actually because I hadn't watched the game, but I'm trying to make a play. Like, you got to make a play, and like it's a scramble drill, turn the field, and he kind of breaks down, and I let it go. And it's like as soon as I let it go, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's just like this miscommunication. But everyone wants to look at the stat line, like, oh, he threw 3 picks. Like, realistically, there's 1 pick I'm going to beat myself up about, but the other 2, I'm just making plays at that point. Like, I'm trying my hardest. And so I'm glad you say that because to me, like these fans sit here, I get blasted on Twitter for that stuff. And I don't let it really affect me, but I was already pissed about the whole game. And then people are trying to, I don't know, go play quarterback in the Fiesta Bowl against Penn State.
Yeah. No, see, here's the thing, man. And I'm so like, it's cool talking to you because as I said, as I've gotten older, I've kind of laid off the brakes a little bit, trying to be critical of collegiate athletes. This is a high level game. You guys are playing at a very high level, and there's some like serious pressures there that nobody in the regular world is going to 99% of the human population will never experience, yet they always have an opinion on it. Right. So, you know, and even in the media, I'll share my opinions, but I try to have a little more empathy. I thought you played a fantastic game. And one of the things I can't stand as a media guy myself, dude, is stat watchers. People who look at a stat line and break it down. If you don't watch the game with context, get out of here. Don't ever share your opinion. I can't stand stat watchers. Don't be a stat watcher. Watch the game or shut up. Like, you should never talk on anything. And that's the same thing as I'm a Biletnikoff Award voter, and I freaking hate the voters. I do. I can't stand them because they literally don't have to watch one single down of football to vote. And it's the dumbest thing. And I get so mad about it every time the polls come out because they'll talk about it. We'll get in chats about it. And I'm like, you literally haven't watched one snap of any of this. And it's so dumb. All they get is a little thing with a stat sheet, and they vote and they pick their drop down. And they don't watch a single snap. So anyway, I could go off for that forever, but I thought you played extremely well. What was your favorite play, though? What was your favorite moment during that game?
Yeah, my favorite play was by far, like, we come out of half, and we ran, like, the leak play to Lauder that went for, like, 50 yards. And I was like, to me, that was, like, a moment in the game, too. Like, there was a little bit of discouragement, you know. Our defense had played really good, and offensively we're just struggling a little bit. And so, like, to find that, like, momentum a little bit, I was like, okay. And then, like, we go out, get a stop, I believe. And I was like, okay, like, I'm glad. Like, to me, I always, like, that's one thing I love to, like, just, I'm staying in games no matter what. I'm not going to let us down by 20 affect me. Like, I'm going to stay in a game no matter what. But I know, like, for a whole team, that's difficult. But to see that in that moment, like, throwing a touchdown in the Fiesta Bowl is something, like, not very many people can say they did. And so, like, I loved every minute of that. That was awesome.
Is it hard to throw to a guy who's wide open? I always get worried about that.
Those are the hardest. Those are the very hardest. It's like even on that one, like, I stopped him because I'm like, I will not overthrow you. I'm not going to make you dive back, but I'm going to put it right on you to where you're not going to have to jump and catch or like stuff like that.
Yeah, dude, I worry about that sometimes, man. That specific play, I'm just like, man, I would be nervous if I were you, just like letting it fly. I'm like, yeah, put a little too much on it, or it goes a little trail into the right or something. I don't know. Yeah. That's so cool, man. So, you know, I wanted to ask you about Coach Danielson. So Spencer's over there, has changed the culture a little bit. Well, I mean, he comes in there, the players play for him, right? It feels like at least we can see that the players want to play for the guy. What have you noticed as a quarterback, a leader on the team, from a player's perspective, like the impact that Coach Danielson has had?
Yeah, everyone just enjoys being there. Like, you don't see that very. I mean, I guess I didn't see it in the first couple of years. Like, it would drag on to these people. Like, oh, I have to be here. Like, everyone wants to be there, and that's the biggest thing. Like, when you feel the, like, not the need to be there, but the want to be there, that's gonna make the biggest difference. And that's what Coach Danielson brings. Is like, everyone wants to be there.
Freaking love it, dude. Yeah, he seems like a great dude. One day I would love to chat with him and just kind of see like his whole, I love his love for Jesus. I love his openness about his faith, but I also love how he develops a culture and he he gets guys to play the game. Like, the dude is a stud. He knows what he's doing. I think it's cool. When you can get a coach that gets guys to play for him, that's special, because that's not always the case. Like you said, not everybody wants to come to practice and play and all stuff. But when you get a group that does, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So 2 questions left for you, man. Just 2 questions. So coming off of a loss, not many teams get to end their season on a win anyway. So like, that's what I tell a lot of guys. Like, listen, most teams lose to end their season. There's only a handful of teams that actually can like say they won their last game. It's the reality. In any sport, in any season, not many people get to go out on a win. But I want to know from your guys' perspective, you had a historic season, awesome year, something to be extremely proud of. There's some concerns about like who's coming back next year, what's it going to be like and whatnot. What are your plans right now, Maddux, as you guys are prepping for the next season? What are you expecting going into next year?
Yeah, a big thing to me is like, we can't really bring the past with us. Obviously, there's lessons that we can bring with us, but not bringing the past with us, because we're not going to be the same team that we were last year. And we might be just as good, but it's not going to be the same team. And I think everyone has a great understanding of that. Like, there's roles to fill. There's big roles to fill. In my opinion, we lose the Heisman winner.
Yeah.
And I know like Sire and Breezy, Malik, those backs, like they're ready to fill that. And there's so many other positions like that. But that's kind of where it is now, of like, you're training now. That's my plan now, is to get to that point again with this team. And a lot of it comes to like connection. You bring in, gosh, it felt like 100 guys, but it was probably only 20. You bring in 20 guys and it's a whole new team. And you're just trying your hardest to get these guys rallying together again.
Oh, that's cool though. I mean, that's the beauty of it though. You got stuff to work towards, and you got lessons that you've learned you can take with you. But I think also the other cool thing about it is you guys now know what it takes to get there. And yeah, it can be daunting knowing that a little bit too, but you've been there. So it's no longer, that's a standard now. Like, you know what it takes.
Right. I'm glad you said that, because it is the standard. To us, that's the standard. And now we know exactly what it took to get there. So
dope, dude. Well, final question for you, Maddux. What's the biggest life lesson that football has taught you?
Yeah, I think football especially. I think football has taught me like that there's strength in relationships. And obviously, like, I'm not trying to take like, a 100-yard field into my life. Like, no, like, the lesson to me is the people that I've met here are going to have this long-lasting impact to a lot of the people that I've met in my past life. I feel like this is for every like collegiate athlete, it's such a growing stage. And I mean, I just got the chills talking about, like, it's a huge growing stage for myself as a freshman even now. And I know there's still room to grow, but something that to me is never going to change is the relationships that you have with people. And down the line, I mean, I could be homeless one day and it's like, hey, Ashton, I know you played 15 years in the league. Like, I need some help, dog. And I'm sure like he'd be willing to do that because of the relationships that we built now. And to me, that's just such a life lesson. Like, it's huge. There's power in relationships, and not very many people understand that.
That's so dope, dude. That's so cool. I appreciate you sharing that, man. I just want to say thank you, man. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join me for the show and share your story with us and like all these golden nuggets. As I always say, guys, please take notes. Get your notebooks out. Take notes when you're listening to the podcast. And if you guys want to hit me up in a DM or something, let me know what you learned from Maddux. Please do. I love hearing what people enjoy about the interviews. That's one of my favorite parts, getting responses in my DMs and my emails and like text messages about this, that, and the third. I think it's so cool. So, Maddux, I just want to say thanks, man. I appreciate you joining the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Seriously, it's cool to just chat. Not this strict interview. I got to worry about what I'm saying. Like, I can have a good conversation, a real conversation with people.
Heck yeah, man. That's what it's all about. And I appreciate it. And for all those who are listening, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Like I said at the beginning, please hit the subscribe button because we'll be coming to you guys next week with another interview. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.